Today in the shop, we're working on some pipe rails. I've already went ahead and bed in one, but we'll go through the process of how we're going to do this. This is 1¼ inch schedule 40 pipe, 1.66 on the OD. Baleigh M250, it's a programmable bender. It does a lot of stuff. We're in manual bend mode just because I'm figuring out each tube kind of seems like it wants to be different on spring brack and all that stuff. So I kind of just go off manual bend program and set it up as I go per bend. Yeah, so we'll get into that. Okay, so these are the blueprints that we're working off of. I made these blueprints. I took the dimensions, and I'm not really a main welder here. I kind of do this stuff in my off time, just kind of help out around. But mostly I am an engineer or architect, if you will. I go out, take measurements, and then build blueprints with SolidWorks. I do stuff in 3D. This was all made in 3D, and then I turn it into a 2D blueprint. So I know what all these references are and what I need to do to get to there. So I'll show you where we'll start with. So this is actually going to be a 4-piece rail. So our posts here and posts here are one piece from here down around one piece, and then our center piece right here. You'll see I don't have the other leg cut. That's all that I had left on one tube. But I have our center piece cut. Well, basically we're going to make our 2 90s, kick up 28 degrees, kick back 28 degrees, and then another 2 90s. And that gives us basically that shape to work off of. Now, if I was building these for my own personal stuff and I was worried about, fit up and all that stuff, I would be much more particular about all that other stuff. But somebody else is going to end up trimming to fit and all this stuff. So I'm going to leave everything a little bit long on my legs. So as we're looking at this one here, 7 1/8 is our gap from the inside to inside of those posts. We're using a 3-inch centerline die. It really adds about 4 inches to the outside from our bend mark here on the die right there. So from there to the outside of the bend at 90 degrees is about 4 inches. So so what I will do is I'll basically come over here half the distance of a pipe. So I just add 1 inch. Even though it's only 1.66, I just go ahead and add 1 inch. So I mark it 8 1/8 for the first one, and that kind of gets us started on everything else. Okay, so here on our tube meter, we got our first piece set in here. What I like to do is I usually keep the seam at the top as best as I can, straight up 12 o'clock. Just allows a little easier. You don't really want the seam to be the inside or the outside of the bend. On this, it's not really that big a deal, but when you get on thinner wall stuff or some aluminum or some other types of materials, they like to tear at the seams, especially if you're trying to get a tight radius bend on something like that. So we've got our first mark. Like I said, it's 7 1/8 is our inside to inside, but I add 1 inch that they have additionally for the cope. So what I'll do, this first one in here, we just kind of to our mark. Go ahead and knock that down. Coming over here, so our first bend, 90 degrees. Our spring back, I've already messed around with this. This last tube was about 11.5 degrees, gave me pretty close to 90. So we're gonna roll with that. I'm on speed 4. All this other stuff doesn't really matter, it's just the amperage if you're overloading the bender, but this is pretty well thin wall tube, so not too worried about that. So all there is to do is push the old foot pedal and get going. First of all, I need to set up on these rollers though, because this stuff will fall over. All right, up on the rollers now, back again. I add a little bit of lube to the rollers here, a little bit on the front, down there. And then back reverse. And that is our first bend. Okay, so for bend number 2, we see our outside to outside measurement, 19 3/8 inches. Like I said, we had about 4 inches on the bend, 3-inch center line, and it's kind of varies just depending, but about 4 inches, and that's good enough on some pipe rails. Like I said, we can trim and cope all this to fit. So what we need to do is we need to pull 15 3/8 from the outside of this and make our mark, and that's where our bend is going to be, because we're going to add the 4 inches essentially to the outside of this once we bend this around for our final bit. So we'll come over here and make some marks. Try to do this one-handed. Where our mark is. I'm gonna sit down and make a mark. Okay, there's our mark, 15 3/8 from there. So now what we've got to do is marked. Get us lined up in there. Mark. Now, make sure that this is level. All right, that's pretty good if you ask me. Yeah, so that's pretty level there. So make sure we come over here and lock that in. Now we go another 90 degrees for this one. Now, if we look at our piece, get this in to stay put. You can see we're basically, damn it, hooking to round tube not so easy. You can see we're basically right at 18 3/8 inches from outside to outside, which is right where we wanted to be. So our next one, what we're going to do is, so we're 10 1/4 from the tangent of where this bend meets the straight on that. So essentially where this mark is going to be, again, we'll open this die up and we'll make a mark on it, because that is the tangent from 90 degrees once we've spun around. Okay, so we've marked our tangent, and now we're looking at our print here. It's 10 1/4 from this tangent to the start of the next bend. So basically we made a mark, 10 1/4 down, boom, we're gonna line that back up with our 0 degree on that. Come back over here. This needs to be level once again. Put some tension on this actually. All right, that was good. So we're at 90 degrees. Go ahead and lock in. Bow. This time we're only gonna go 28 degrees. And our spring back is 4 degrees. That's what I got on it last time. Not too bad. But we're still bending in the same direction. So that's something to keep noting. So we're still bending on the same plane. And you'll see when we get to the bottom, we're gonna have to bend opposite. So we're gonna flip the whole entire unit around and flip 180 degrees. So let's get this one in bent up real quick. Oh, that's annoying. Be like that sometimes. bending the full stick usually sucks. But yeah, so there we go. Okay, so we're 3 bends in now. So the next thing we're going to do, bend the opposite. Since this is 28 down and we're going back level, we're going to bend 28 degrees the opposite way. We are at 33 and 3/16 from tangent to tangent, essentially. So let's go ahead and mark that out. And remember, like I said, since we're going opposite, we're going to try to mark the tube on the back side. And I got a little something for that. Let me set this down and mark it up real quick. All right, so we got a pretty cool tool that I use a lot. It's called the Flange Wizard. Well, it's from Flange Wizard, but it's called the Wizard Wrap. It's basically just flexible tape. You can lay out. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with this. It's really for pipe welding. It's got a lot of layouts for angles and stuff, and fitting up on a pipe just makes it easy because obviously, trying to measure on round isn't always as easy as it is on square. So basically what we can do here is use our pipe wrap. It's a lot easier with 2 hands. But essentially, you get that till it's lined up and on your mark, and you can just scribe a perfect circle around. And that's what we're going to do. Okay, with the help of our Wizard Wrap, we now have a line that goes all the way around the tube. Because like I said, we bent in the same direction, and now we're going to opposite that. So what we do is we actually turn the pipe itself 180 degrees. Always helps to go all the way home to 0 first. 5 degrees off makes a big difference on being able to open and close the jaws. Let me set this down. All right, some of this is hard to film and hold and do everything at once with one hand. So we've got our mark on our notch, and basically what we have to do now, make sure our tube is level once again, which is not even close. That's too far. Pretty good there. So once again, 28 degrees, 4 degrees spring back, and we are going in the opposite direction. Forward on the pedal. Okay. So now we're to here. So what we got to do is we're going to figure 8 1/4 to the next bend. So we're going to measure from the tangent of our last bend, 8 1/4, make a mark, and then we're going to bend 90. Just basically repeat the same process so our returns are the same size on the top and bottom. All right, so we're back up in the bender again, like I said. So we were going to go 8 1/4 from our tangent to tangent. That's our new mark. We're in there, we're set up, we're level on plane here. So now what we're going to do is bend. Like I said, we flipped it back around again because now we're trying to close that loop. So 90 degrees. So we're going to do that right now. Okay, now setting up for our last bend. All we got to do is bring this 90 back. So what we did is the same on this one. Remember, our 4 inches takeaway. So we're going to go 15 3/8 from the outside of here, all right, to our new line here. And then we're going to put that at our new 0 mark. We'll bend it 90. And then all we've got to do is basically measure, I'm going to get it an inch, like I said, 11 1/8, chop it off, and that's that. So we're going to bend this all in one shot, and then we'll just cut the piece off, and then we'll make all of our rest of our pieces off those drops as we go. We've got one more bend to do, obviously, for this section. Not a big deal. We just chuck it in there about 4 inches and bend it and call it good, and trim to fit as we build. Okay, and now we have our last bend, like I said, marked in there, 15 3/8. We are nice and level. So just kind of propped up right now. Once we get bending, I'm going to move this out of the way because it's going to tip over, so we'll do that. Last bend, I'm going to put the camera down and you'll just see it when it's okay. So there's our last bend. Now all we have to do is just cut it off. Essentially, we're going to go 11 1/8 from the inside, cut it off, and then that's that. And to kind of just show, you see the one that was on the ground was the first one. I was kind of feeling out the spring back and everything, but the 90s was the only real tough one to get figured out. But you can see it's just a little off there. But for the most part, we maintain a pretty even. And then this 90 down here got a little off. It's actually this one right here, and it's kicking this tube. Well, this one, it was a little too tight, so this bottom one's kicked in a little bit. But that's good enough. We can heat it up, bend it a little bit more with a torch if we have to get it in place. But for some basic like pipe rails, just going to go on along some sidewalks. That's good enough.